extinction. You've probably heard it. That throwaway line in a documentary or a news snippet. Most people outside of Africa have a little bit of Neanderthal in them. It's a strange thought that these ancient, long gone relatives are not entirely gone. A piece of them is right here, inside our cells. It's a ghost in our own machine. The number is usually small, just 1 to 4%. But when you spread that across billions of people, it means a huge amount of the Neanderthal genome is still around, just scattered among us. And this raises a big question, a really big one. What is that DNA doing? Is it just old junk floating around in our genetic code, a souvenir from a chance encounter tens of thousands of years ago? Or is it active? Does it affect how we look, how we feel, how we get sick? And if it is active, are we stuck with it? Or is our own evolution right now, in the 21st century, slowly editing it out? Are we still evolving past our Neanderthal genes? The short answer is yes and no. The story isn't simple. It's a messy, complicated, and fascinating look at what it means to be human. It's a story about survival, compromise, and the echoes of the deep past shaping our present. To get a handle on this, we have to go back. Way back. Not just a few centuries, but 50,000 or 60,000 years. Our species, Homo sapiens, started in Africa. For hundreds of thousands of years, that was our home. We evolved there, adapted to its climates, its diseases, its challenges. But then, in a series of waves, some of our ancestors began to move. They walked out of Africa and into a new world. They entered the Middle East, then spread across Asia and into Europe. And this new world was not empty. It was already occupied. For a couple 100,000 years, Europe and Asia had been the domain of the Neanderthals. We need to get the picture of Neanderthals right. Forget the dumb, brutish caveman cliché. That's a 100-year-old misconception based on a poorly reconstructed skeleton of an old, arthritic Neanderthal man. The reality is that they were incredibly successful. They survived ice ages. They were skilled hunters using sophisticated stone tools and wooden spears to take down massive animals like mammoths and woolly rhinos. They controlled fire. They likely had some form of language. They cared for their sick and elderly. They buried their dead. They were not our ancestors, but our cousins, a different branch of the human family tree that had left Africa long before we did and had adapted to a colder, darker world. So, our ancestors, fresh out of a tropical African homeland, walked into their territory. What happened next? For a long time, scientists thought we simply replaced them. The smart, modern humans showed up, and the Neanderthals just faded away, outcompeted into extinction. But genetics threw a massive wrench in that simple story. When scientists first sequenced the Neanderthal genome from ancient bones found in a Croatian cave, they did something brilliant. They compared it to the genomes of living people from all around the world. And they found a match. People from Europe, from Asia, from the Americas all had stretches of DNA that were distinctly Neanderthal. But people from sub-Saharan Africa, whose ancestors had never left the continent, had virtually none. The conclusion was unavoidable. Our ancestors and Neanderthals had children together. It wasn't a war of replacement, it was a story of contact and mixture. We don't know what these encounters were like. We can't know if they were peaceful or violent, rare or common, but we know they happened. They happened somewhere in the Middle East, probably around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, after our ancestors first left Africa, but before they spread out across the rest of the world. That's why the Neanderthal DNA is found in everyone outside of Africa. It was a single mixing event, or perhaps a series of them over a long period that injected this new genetic material into the human population. As those humans then moved on to become the ancestors of modern Europeans and Asians, they carried that small percentage of Neanderthal DNA with them. And we carry it still. It's a direct, living link to those ancient encounters on the plains of Eurasia. So, what did we get in this genetic trait? It's tempting to think of it as a random grab bag of traits. But evolution doesn't work that way. Natural selection acts like a filter. Genes that are harmful tend to get weeded out. Genes that are helpful, or at least not harmful, get to stick around. And the genes that offer a real advantage in a new environment can spread like wildfire. Think about our ancestors arriving in Europe. They were an African species entering a whole new world. The sun was different, the climate was colder, and crucially, the germs were different. The local bacteria, viruses, and parasites were completely new to their immune systems. Neanderthals, on the other hand, had been living there for 200,000 years. Their immune systems were battle-hardened and adapted to these local pathogens. Interbreeding with Neanderthals was like getting a genetic shortcut. Instead of waiting thousands of years for our own immune systems to evolve the right defenses through random mutation, our ancestors could pick up a ready-made set of immunity genes from the locals. And that seems to be exactly what happened. Some of the most common and persistent Neanderthal genes found in modern humans are related to our immune system. They are genes that build proteins called toll-like receptors. These are like the sentinels of our immune system. They sit on the surface of our cells and detect signs of invading bacteria and fungi. The Neanderthal versions of these genes were apparently very good at spotting Eurasian germs. So, the children of these mixed pairings who inherited the Neanderthal immune genes likely survived infections better and had more children themselves. The genes were a gift. They helped our species survive and thrive in a new land. Another gift seems to be related to skin and hair. Neanderthal DNA in many people influences keratin, a protein that makes up our skin, hair, and nails. Some of these genes are associated with thicker skin and hair. This makes perfect sense as an adaptation to a colder, less sunny environment. Thicker skin could provide better insulation against the cold and protection from scrapes and cuts. Different hair properties could do the same. Other genes we inherited from them influence skin pigmentation. Adapting to the lower levels of UV light in northern latitudes was critical for our ancestors, and grabbing some pre-adapted Neanderthal genes was a quick way to do it. But this inheritance is a double-edged sword. The genes that helped us 50,000 years ago are not always helpful in the world of 2024. Our environment has changed dramatically, but our ancient genes haven't. This is called an evolutionary mismatch. And it's where the problems start. That supercharged immune system we inherited. It's a bit of a liability now. In a world of sanitation, clean water, and antibiotics, our immune systems don't have as many real threats to fight. So what does a powerful hair-trigger immune system do when it gets bored? It starts attacking things it shouldn't. It attacks pollen, causing allergies. It attacks peanuts. It sometimes even attacks our own bodies. Many modern autoimmune disorders, like Crohn's disease and lupus, have been linked to these overactive Neanderthal immune genes. The system that was designed to fight off ancient plagues now contributes to chronic inflammation and disease in a modern context. It's a gift that has overstayed its welcome. The same goes for metabolism. Some Neanderthal genes seem to affect how our bodies process fats. In an Ice Age world of feast and famine, having genes that helped you store fat efficiently during a successful hunt would have been a massive survival advantage. It could have meant the difference between surviving a long winter and starving. But today, in a world where high-calorie food is available 24/7 on every street corner, those same fat-storing genes are a recipe for disaster. They increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes and obesity. A lifesaver for a hunter-gatherer becomes a health risk for an office worker. Another clear example is blood clotting. One Neanderthal gene variant that is quite common in Europeans makes blood clot more quickly. Again, you can see the Ice Age advantage. For a hunter facing down a giant elk with a spear, or for a woman giving birth in a cave, a wound that clots quickly could prevent you from bleeding to death. It's a huge plus, but for a modern human sitting at a desk all day or on a long-haul flight, that same trait increases the risk of dangerous blood clots forming in your legs or lungs. It raises the risk for deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, and stroke. The links go on. Neanderthal DNA has been associated with an increased risk for depression and other mood disorders. One theory is that these genes are tied to our circadian rhythms, our internal body clock. Neanderthals lived in northern latitudes with long, dark winters. Genes that adjusted sleep patterns and mood to cope with that environment might be mismatched to our modern, artificially lit world, contributing to mental health challenges. Even things like our preference for being a night owl versus a morning person and our likelihood to get lonely have tentative links to these ancient genes. And then came the COVID-19 pandemic. This gave scientists a real-time global test of how our ancient genes affect our response to a brand new disease. The results were stunning. A team of scientists discovered a big chunk of Neanderthal DNA on chromosome 3. And it turned out to be the single biggest genetic risk factor for severe COVID-19. People who carried this Neanderthal gene cluster were significantly more likely to be hospitalized and require ventilation if they caught the virus. This single genetic inheritance, passed down for 50,000 years, was having a devastating impact on a 21st century disease. It was a stark reminder that our past is not dead. It's not even past. But the story had a twist. Later, researchers found another Neanderthal gene segment, this one on chromosome 12. And it did the opposite. It was protective, reducing the risk of severe COVID-19 by about 20%. So, from our Neanderthal cousins, we inherited both a major risk factor and a protective shield. It's a perfect illustration of the messy, unpredictable nature of our genetic inheritance. This brings us to the core of the question. We have this mixed bag of genes. Some are maybe still helpful, some are neutral, and some are clearly causing problems in our modern world. So, is our genome cleaning house? Is evolution actively purging the problematic Neanderthal DNA? The answer is a definite yes. In fact, it's been happening for 50,000 years. The process is called negative selection. It's the quiet, relentless work of evolution weeding out genetic variants that reduce an individual's chances of surviving and having children. When scientists look at the human genome, they don't just see where the Neanderthal DNA is. They also see where it isn't. There are vast stretches of our DNA that are like deserts, completely empty of any Neanderthal contribution. And these deserts are not random. They are in very specific, very important places. One of the biggest deserts is on the X chromosome. This is one of the two sex chromosomes. And women have two X chromosomes, while men have one X and one Y. The fact that the X chromosome has been so thoroughly cleansed of Neanderthal DNA points to a phenomenon called hybrid incompatibility. This is common when two closely related but distinct species interbreed. The resulting hybrid offspring are often viable, but they may have problems with fertility. Specifically, the males are often sterile or have reduced fertility. This is known as Haldane's rule. It seems likely that the male children of human Neanderthal pairings were less fertile than other humans. A Neanderthal gene on the X chromosome of a male human might have interfered with his ability to produce healthy sperm. If that's the case, he wouldn't pass on his X chromosome or his Neanderthal genes to any daughters. Over many generations, this would systematically scrub Neanderthal DNA from the X chromosome. And that's exactly what the data shows. Another major desert is in the genes related to the brain. We find very little Neanderthal DNA in the parts of our genome that are involved in brain development, cognition, and especially language. The FOXP2 gene, for example, is famously linked to our ability for complex speech. It is a desert completely devoid of Neanderthal variants. This suggests that the Neanderthal versions of these brain-related genes just didn't work well in a modern human brain. Perhaps they caused developmental problems or cognitive disadvantages. Whatever the reason, natural selection pushed them out, preserving our own uniquely Homo sapiens cognitive toolkit. The same is true for genes involved in the male reproductive system, specifically the testes. This further supports the idea that male hybrids were less fertile. Any Neanderthal gene that gummed up the works of human sperm production would be strongly selected against and would disappear from the gene pool. So this purging has been going on for a very long time. The most problematic pieces of Neanderthal DNA, the ones that cause outright sterility or serious developmental problems, were likely filtered out within the first few thousand years after the interbreeding happened. We got rid of the really bad stuff pretty quickly, evolutionarily speaking. What we are left with today is the DNA that was either beneficial, neutral, or only mildly negative. The good stuff, like the immune genes, was actively selected for and became more common. This is positive selection. The bad stuff we're dealing with now, like the risk for diabetes or autoimmune disease, is bad mostly because our environment has changed. For most of human history, these genes were not a problem. They may have even been helpful. The selective pressure against them is very, very new. Is this selection still happening today? Yes, evolution never stops, but its pace and direction are changing. Modern medicine and technology have a huge impact on how natural selection works. Take the blood clotting gene. In the past, a person who developed a life-threatening blood clot would likely die. They wouldn't pass that gene on. That's strong negative selection. Today, we have blood thinners and emergency surgery. A person can survive a pulmonary embolism, live a full life, and have children, passing that gene on to the next generation. We are, in effect, shielding our genes from the full force of natural selection. This means that the purging of these mildly detrimental Neanderthal genes is probably happening much, much more slowly than it used to. The selective pressures have also changed. It's no longer about surviving a saber-toothed cat attack or a brutal ice age winter. The new selective pressures are chronic diseases. Does type 2 diabetes affect a person's ability to have children? In some cases, yes, but often it develops later in life, after people have already had their families. This means the evolutionary pressure to remove the genes that contribute to it is weak. So, We are in a strange new phase of our evolution. The big, powerful wave of negative selection that removed the most incompatible Neanderthal genes is long over. We are now in a period of much slower, more subtle sifting. The genes that are truly bad for us in our modern world will likely, over many thousands of years, become less common. But medicine and lifestyle changes are constantly changing the rules of the game. What does all this mean for us? It means we are a more complex and interconnected species than we ever imagined. The clean, branching tree of human evolution, with Homo sapiens at the top, is wrong. The real story is more like a tangled, braided stream. Our lineage flowed and mixed with others. We are hybrids. We carry the legacy of these other kinds of humans within us. The Neanderthals are not truly extinct. A small part of them survived in us. Their genetic legacy is a testament to their own evolutionary success, a set of adaptations so useful that they found a home in a different species. But that legacy is complicated. It's a source of strength, giving our ancestors the tools to survive in a new world. But it's also a source of weakness, leaving us vulnerable to the diseases of our modern world. We are still evolving past our Neanderthal genes, but it's not a simple process of deletion. It's a slow, ongoing negotiation. Our bodies, our culture, and our technology are all part of a long conversation with this ghost in our genome. We are living with the consequences of events that took place 50,000 years ago. And the way we live now will determine which parts of that ancient inheritance we carry into the future. It's a profound thought. The choices we make every day, as a society and as individuals, are a new form of selective pressure. We are not just passive carriers of this ancient DNA, we are active participants in the next chapter of its story and our own. The purging isn't over, the editing is still in progress, happening invisibly inside each of us, generation by generation.